What is up, y'all? Today we are talking about the pre-production work that went into the mini doc that I filmed with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Last week I released a little behind the scenes showing the trip that we went on and the film that we started to make. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll have a link at the end of this video that you can click on to check that out. In the comments, I was getting a number of questions about how did we plan for this trip and the different parts that went into pre-production. So I thought I'd just put a video together and talk through some of the stuff that we worked through as we prepared for this project. If you're new around here, my name is Scott Bell. I'm an outdoor adventure filmmaker. On the channel, I talk tips and tricks about filmmaking, as well as take you along behind the scenes on the different projects that I'm working on. So if that sort of stuff is interesting to you, I hope you'll think about hitting that subscribe button. But let's get into today's content. Last year, Gabe Swift and I worked on a collaborative project where we were actually characters in the film. And as a result, we had to go back and forth between operating the camera and playing our role as a character. And we've decided to be a lot of fun to actually find a different person to be our main character so we both could be behind the lens and work with one another, framing up shots and coming up with ideas for the project. So that's the foundation of this. And from there, we just started bouncing text messages back and forth and eventually got to the point where let's jump on a call and let's actually talk through this. We live about 3 hours away from each other, so it's not something that we could talk about every day, but we tried to get on a Skype conversation every couple weeks and start to flesh out an idea. And what we came to is that we wanted to create a piece that we were both really proud of in our portfolio and something that we could think of a little bit like spec work for some of the clients around here that we're trying to get. We wanted to make a video that would maybe apply to the tourism boards around here or might apply to an outdoor brand. So with that, we tried to figure out what kind of story we wanted to tell. And we knew we wanted it to be contemplative. That's the type of work that both of us tend to do. We knew we wanted it to be outdoors, kind of exploring. And so we started to work together a basic storyboard idea where we have a character that goes out into the forest and is taking photos or something like this. Fortunately, Gabe has a friend who's an outdoor photographer named Landon Copplestone, and he was on board with the project. Along with developing the story and the general mood, we wanted to start thinking through what did we want this project to feel like from a shot point of view. And we settled on a lot of static shots and some handheld work. This meant we didn't need to bring a gimbal into the backcountry. It also would create a more contemplative mood in those longer held static shots. We also wanted to show people being small in a big landscape. That was going to be the foundation of this piece. And so we wanted lots of very wide shots that showed the vastness of nature, and then shots where there was a lot of compression in the shot. So we'd be bringing the background very close and making it feel very large with the small person in the shot. The next step was figuring out the location, and Landon was actually super helpful for this as he had explored a couple areas already that he wanted to go back to and thought would be really good for this project. We had a few parameters that we were trying to stay within. The location needed to be easily accessible, needed to be visually really stunning, needed to not be super busy, and it needed to be something that we didn't have to hike too far into with a bunch of camera gear, basically. So we settled on a spot that he thought would meet all these goals really well, and it turned out to be a beautiful location for this shoot. Next, we needed to figure out how we were going to drive the story forward. We decided that an interview format with B-roll overlaid would work best for the type of story that we were trying to tell. And so we set out to write some interview questions that would pull out some really good emotional conversations from Landon. We started that interview with super simple throwaway kind of questions, talking about camera gear and stuff like that. And as we went forward, we started to dig in deeper into those questions that are the good responses that we want to make sure he's really comfortable and feeling a little bit open to answering some of those harder questions. As we were writing the questions, we didn't actually include Landon in those conversations. I find you get a much more candid response if they don't know what you're going to ask them. It's good to give them a bit of direction so they can think a little bit about what they're going to talk about, but not give them the actual questions. With the actual questions we wrote, we took two different angles so we would have some flexibility afterwards to figure out the exact story we wanted to tell. We started with photography as a way to get outdoors and that interesting relationship a lot of photographers have with nature and exploring. And then we also went into things around land conservation and how photography can be a tool to conserve land or have people think about climate change, things like this. So we had questions all across the board that would give us a lot of flexibility in the final product that we put together. In the end, the interview ended up being about an hour of questions, and we have a lot of really good content to work with. The final thing that we needed to figure out were the logistics and the gear that we were gonna bring. So with Gabe and Landon living about 3 hours away and me being closer to the actual location we were going to shoot, we chose my house as the home base. And the plan was to have them come up Friday night, we'd shoot the interview in the evening, and then we'd head out on Saturday morning. It turns out everything got pushed a little bit and they didn't get in until quite late. And so we decided to shoot the interview first thing Saturday morning. Because of the time of the year, it turned out that we had to wake up really early in the morning to get that nice soft light. So we were up at 4:30, getting ready, going to our interview location, which was pretty tiring, but worked out in the end. In addition to that, we needed to figure out how we were going to power our camera for both the interview and in the backcountry. We knew that the Blackmagic Pocket just chews through batteries. You get about 30 to 40 minutes per battery, and we didn't want to have to change the battery mid-interview. So we actually brought a portable power bank that we could plug the camera straight into and use that to power during the interview. And then while on the hike, we brought this little unit called the Power Junkie that allows you to use Sony L-series batteries to charge any sort of USB thing. And we used that to charge the Canon batteries that go into the Blackmagic. So we had 3 batteries on hand, making sure we could always be charging one, have one that was fully charged, and then one that was operating the camera. Worked out really well, didn't end up with any battery issues, which is nice. We decided that we would shoot just with Blackmagic cameras only. Gabe runs an Ursa Mini Pro, and then he's got the Pocket that he just purchased. And so we used both of these cameras as A and B cam, and then we left the Ursa behind, only bringing the Pocket with us on the hike so that it wasn't a whole bunch of weight, carrying V-mount batteries and things like that. We knew we'd need to stop between the interview and the actual hike to drop off our secondary camera and dump footage and recharge batteries so that when we were leaving on the hike, everything was already ready to go and we didn't have a bunch of gear that we didn't really need. I won't go into all the other setup pieces of the interview in terms of gear. You can check out the behind the scenes that I released last week. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video that you can check out. Other than that, we didn't storyboard anything. We just had an intended goal of where we were headed and timing to get there. If this was a project for a client, I probably would try to storyboard a little bit more out, but the main thing we went in is knowing what type of frames we wanted, static frames and some follow shots of the main character. And then we just kind of did run and gun style, figured it out as we went, talked about ideas as we were hiking up the trail and made stuff work that we thought would end up in the final edit. In addition to that, we tried to shoot everything in sequences as much as possible, so getting between 3 and 5 shots describing a specific activity that was happening so that it's not just one shot and that's all we've got. I think that was about it that went into pre-production. There was a lot of logistics to figure out, but in the end, it worked out super well. If there's anything that I missed, feel free to drop questions in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer those questions. If you haven't seen the behind the scenes yet, check the card at the end of this video and that'll take you over there. Super fun little video that we put together. But until the next time, get out there, make something beautiful, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.